Born in the little village of Balcarce in the Argentine on the 24th of June 1911, the fourth of the family of 6 born to Loreto and Herminia Fangio, no man has given more to the essentially 20th century art of motor racing than has the incomparable Juan Manuel Fangio, 5 times champion driver of the world. And the young Fangio went to work in a garage. In 1928, at the age of 17, he rode as a mechanic in a race for Model T Fords. His first appearance upon the European scene was at Reims in 1948, at the wheel of a Simca Gordini, but he failed to finish. In 1949, he returned and began his meteoric rise to fame by winning the opening race of the European season, the San Remo Grand Prix on Maserati. In all, he won 7 races that year to share the season's honors with Villoresi and the young Alberto Ascari, each of whom also scored 7 victories. In 1950, Fangio joined Alfa Romeo, and at Monaco, he set off to score one of his 8 victories that year. A 9-car pileup on the first lap cut the field by half, but Fangio, the rising star, came through to win, and this, incidentally, at the age of 39, when many drivers think of retiring. Royal Silverstone, the Grand Prix d'Europe 1950, was attended by their Majesties and provided British enthusiasts with their first sight of Fangio and the invincible Alphas, who finished 1, 2, 3 despite Fangio's retirement with 8 laps to go. In 1951, Fangio became, for the first time, champion driver of the world. The British Grand Prix that year marked a turning point in motor racing history when, for the first time, the Alphas were defeated by Ferrari. In a tremendous drive, Gonzalez on Ferrari countered every effort of his compatriot Fangio, who gave a superlative display of driving on a circuit unsuited to the Alfa Romeo. 1952, and we find Fangio competing in the Monza Grand Prix. Alfa Romeo had withdrawn from Grand Prix racing, so Fangio signed with BRM. But the BRMs failed to finish at Albi and Dundrod, and a disappointed Fangio flew from Ulster to Italy to drive a Maserati in this race. Fangio, the reigning champion, joins battle with Ascari, his successor, and Farina, his predecessor, on Ferraris, but the battle is brief. Tired by his flight and his 3rd motor race in 8 days, Fangio crashed at Lesmo soon after the start, sustaining injuries that were to keep him out of motor racing for the rest of the year, his only accident in 10 years of European racing. Returning in 1953, Fangio drove one of the greatest races of his career in the classic Mille Miglia, a race in which he had finished 3rd in 1950. Despite his avowed dislike of sports car racing, Fangio, driving an Alfa Romeo, lay 5th at Ravenna, 4th at Pescara, 2nd at Rome, and at Siena and Florence he led the race. When the Alphas of Kling, Farina and Sanesi retired, Fangio alone withstood the Ferrari challenge, but a broken track rod mounting left him with steering on one wheel only. Still, he drove with that implacable will to win so typical of the man, averaging 100 miles an hour on the final section from Bologna to Brescia. But to no avail. Mazzola's 4.1-litre Ferrari took the lead at Bologna to beat the crippled Alfa to the finish by nearly 11 minutes. Seven times was Fangio 2nd in 1953, although he did win the 2nd heat at Albi at 110.48 miles an hour in the BRM, for which mark he drove when not engaged with Maserati.
The next round of the championship was the French Grand Prix, and it was destined to be a classic. Gonzalez decided to start the Grand Prix with a half-full load of fuel. As a result, he rocketed off the line and built up a 20-second lead before having to make his pit stop. Fangio, aware of this, had really driven on the limit and took the lead. Hawthorne, driving probably what was his greatest race, was now up to second and swapping the lead with Fangio on nearly every lap. On lap 58, Hawthorne and Fangio crossed the line side by side. On lap 59, Hawthorne had a slight advantage over Fangio, with Gonzalez and Ascari right behind them. The last lap was tremendous as the four cars approached the Tiroir for the last time. Hawthorne out-accelerated Fangio by using a dodgy first gear to the line.
At Monza, with Ferrari and Maserati evenly matched, the Italian Grand Prix produced some magnificent motor racing. Ascari and Farina on Ferrari, Fangio and Marimont on Maserati were never more than 3 seconds apart for over half the race. Then Marimont made a pit stop and the three world champions, Ascari, Farina and Fangio, raced 1, 2, 3. And Fangio somehow found a gap to win his first major Grand Prix of the year, just 1.4 seconds ahead of Farina. This sensational victory changed his luck, and he won the Modena Grand Prix and the Supercorta Maggiore race before rounding off his season in Mexico to drive for Lancia in the Pan American Road Race. Run in 8 stages, totaling 1,900 miles, Fangio won again. Fangio, already winner of the Argentine and Belgian Grand Prix on Maserati, now led the Mercedes team with Kling and Hermann.
As the cars swept around the high-speed circuit, Neubauer never took his eyes off his stopwatch. And then they were back, with Kling ahead of Fangio. Already Ascari was out with a blown motor, and Pole had retired his Gordini at his pit. By lap 9, the order was Fangio, Kling, Gonzalez, Hawthorne, and Hermann in the third Mercedes. Trouble for Ferrari. The scoreboard indicated that Hawthorne had abandoned with a blown engine. There was to be no repeat of 1953's battle. And Mercedes were now running 1, 2, and 3. Next into the pits was Marimont, engine trouble pulling him back from third place on the 19th lap. He was stationary for 7 minutes as the Mercedes duo thundered on at the head of the field. Kling got ahead of Fangio at half distance. And then suddenly the heavens opened. Rosier retired his Ferrari, and they were down to just 9 runners, with Fangio now ahead of Kling again. Soon the sun was out again, and Fangio still led the race. Trintignant's Ferrari was pushed away to join the others, beaten by the pace.
At Nürburgring, the pattern is repeated.
This is the third round in the duel between the Mercedes and the Ferraris. At Reims, Mercedes won the day. At Silverstone, the Ferraris took top honours. So the Grand Prix is almost a matter of national prestige now. The race is of 22 laps, totaling 312 miles. Hans Hermann drives the enclosed Mercedes. The team's other cars, including number 18 with Fangio at the wheel and 19 driven by Carl Kling, have been fitted with more conventional bodies since the defeat at Silverstone. Quickly in the lead, Fangio sets the pace. Teammate Hermann Lang is not far away. Kling is there. So is Gonzalez, number 1 in his Ferrari. The Mercedes hang on to their lead. 18 and 19, Fangio and Kling, flash past almost together. The halfway stage now, and it looks like a German victory. But Gonzalez is retiring. He's far from well and still very upset by the death of his countryman Marimont, who was killed while practicing for the race. but England's Mike Hawthorn, whose own car has developed engine trouble, takes over the Ferrari. Now the Mercedes are in trouble. Kling is flagged into the pits. There's something wrong with the back axle. While mechanics work like demons, Alfred Neubauer, the German team manager, loses his temper with hordes of onlookers crowding round the pits. But seconds later, Kling is away again. Fangio's on the last lap, but he dare not relax. Hawthorn and Trentino are not far away. Fangio hangs grimly onto his lead, and in he comes to snatch victory in the Grand Prix. Hawthorn is second, Trentino third. So the Mercedes have beaten the Ferraris again, but only just. Fangio, mobbed by an almost fanatical crowd, is congratulated by Federal President Heuss.
In the Swiss Grand Prix, yet another victory fell to the invincible combination of Fangio and Mercedes-Benz.
Moss soon passed Gonzalez for second and tried hard to catch Fangio. However, he was under pressure when Hawthorn caught him. The two Britons duelled around the Parkland circuit. It ended on lap 22, when Moss retired with falling oil pressure caused by the failure of the oil pump. Hawthorn himself retired with fuel feed problems. That promoted Gonzalez to second and Hans Hermann in the other Mercedes to third. Fangio lapped the entire field up to second-placed Gonzalez. Fangio won by nearly a minute, his fifth victory of the season, and the World Championship was close at hand.
Out in the lead, Ascari was supreme in front of his Ferrari-loving Italian fans. However, Fangio was not letting him get away, losing on the corners, but catching up on the straights. The crowd rose as one, as Ascari showed that the almighty Mercedes could be beaten. Then, on lap 44, Moss also got ahead of Fangio and set off in pursuit of Ascari. Moss overtook Ascari on lap 48, only for the Italian's engine to expire, probably from the strain of keeping ahead of the Silver Arrows. Then suddenly, Moss's engine blew as well, leaving Fangio to win as he pleased for Mercedes. Fangio has now won every Grand Prix he has driven in 1954, with the exception of the British.
At the Mercedes-Benz works at Stuttgart, the factory is en fête, to do honor to the world champion whose 6 Grand Prix wins during the year underlined his mastery and his utter determination. Without him, the German team's successes would have been far fewer. For 1955, the team is further strengthened by Britain's #1 driver Stirling Moss, and the 2 fastest drivers drive the world's fastest car round the tree-lined circuit of Spa.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, partez messieurs.
At Rideyoung, Fangio is in the lead in front of Castellotti and Moss in third place. And then the field. Vernonville, 2.5 miles on. Fangio has the lead still, but Moss has taken second position from Castellotti in front of Kling, Vera and Farina. Then Hawthorn, Trentino, Meirez, Pediza, Rosier and Musso. Master, always Fangio in front of Moss and Castellotti. But Farina has passed Vera. Hollowell corner. The speed is fantastic. Fangio is first into Stavilo. Moss follows, and the rest comes scorching behind. La Carrière. First Fangio, second Moss. Castellotti's Lancer is third. Fourth Kling, fifth Farina, then Vera sixth. First lap by Fangio in 4 minutes 36 seconds, 115 miles an hour. Fangio, whose last lap was over 120 miles an hour, is 5 seconds in front of Moss. Rosier is in 10th position, and Fangio, just about to lap him, has put up the fastest lap time ever of 4 minutes 22 seconds, nearly 121 miles an hour. 40 seconds behind comes Castellotti, with Farina 4 seconds later. Musso and Kling, still in front of Paul Frere, are more than a minute behind the leader. Fangio is keeping up a fantastic average speed, now over 120 miles an hour. And as always, Moss is right there behind him. Fangio accelerates again. The 15th lap is covered in 4 minutes 20 and 8/10 seconds. With Moss now 13 seconds later. In the lead, Fangio demonstrates his mastery of the Mercedes. For Neubauer, the race is over, and won. Over 300 miles of superlative driving behind them, the Mercedes pair press on to victory. And Monsieur Backen's checkered flag puts the seal on Fangio's win. And there he goes on his tour d'honneur. 8 seconds later, and it's Sterling Moss in second place. And while the other cars are stopped at the pits, the two Mercedes take their bow around the circuit.
And so they finished first and second in the Belgian Grand Prix, one of the 6 championship events in Europe, of which Mercedes won 5. The Grand Prix of the Argentine, Britain, Belgium, Holland, and finally the Italian Grand Prix at Monza. Once again acclaimed for the 3rd time champion driver of the world. In 1956, Fangio drives for Ferrari.
For the first 15 laps, the lead is held by Mike Hawthorne in BRM number 23. Sterling Moss in a Works Maserati is keeping up well among the leaders, and so is his teammate Jean Berra. Only 2 points separate them in the contest for the world title. Top of the list by a clear 5 points is Peter Collins. He's driving a Ferrari today, number 2. The crowd rush forward as Tony Brooks has a narrow escape when his BRM crashes. But he gets away with slight concussion and a broken jaw. Now Fangio's leading with Collins chasing him. But reigning champion Juan Fangio holds his Ferrari in front like the master he is and wins handsomely. Fangio's wife is here to congratulate him on a victory which has improved his chance of retaining the world title.
At Nürburgring too, Fangio demonstrates his mastery of a young man's sport. Through the twisting, turning Nürburgring, he gives a magnificent display of Grand Prix driving to show the younger stars that he still possesses the incomparable qualities for which motor racing calls. And so one more Grand Prix falls to the man whose courage and skill have become a legend. In 1957, Fangio returned to Maserati, the mark with which he had started his rise to fame.
This 3-hour scramble around the houses and hairpin bends of the tiny state is one of the most exciting in the racing calendar. But the top drivers prefer it to other road races because it's better organized and safer for the public. There's Mike Hawthorne's Ferrari, well up among the leaders. All 4 British aces are battling it out with world champion Juan Fangio of Argentina, and everyone expects a rip-roaring finish. But at one stroke, British hopes are dashed. A fantastic pile-up near the harbour puts Moss, Collins and Hawthorne out of the race. Brake failure on Moss's van wall caused the smash. No one is badly hurt. There's a lucky escape too for Menditegui of Argentina, who crashed almost in the same place. Little opposition remains for Fangio, who thunders home with Tony Brooks in second place. So the greatest driver in the world adds yet one more victory to his fabulous total.
But the greatest race of Fangio's career was yet to come, the German Grand Prix of 1957. Race day was warm and dry as the cars assembled on the grid. Fangio on Maserati, Moss on Van Wall, Collins and Hawthorne on Ferrari amongst an impressive field. Into the south turn, the Ferraris of Hawthorne and Collins lead Fangio's Maserati. But after 3 laps, Fangio leads by 5 seconds. And with 12 laps gone, his lead is 28 seconds over the 2 Ferraris as he pulls into the pits to take on fuel and change the rear wheels. A 52-second pit stop puts him 3/4 of a minute behind Hawthorne and Collins, whose cars can go through the race non-stop. 10 laps to go and 45 seconds to pick up. Fangio begins the race of his life. For 3 laps, he makes no headway. But on lap 16, the gap is down to 33 seconds. On lap 19 to 13.5. On lap 20, Hawthorne and Collins scream past the pits, straining every nerve, with Fangio snapping at their heels. Into the south turn, and he's closer still. Into the north turn, and the fantastic Fangio takes Collins on the inside, and with a lap and a half to go, he leads the race, a race in which he broke the lap record 10 times in 22 laps, reducing it from 9 minutes 37.4 seconds to 9 minutes 17.4, to prove beyond all doubt his claim to immortality as one of the greatest drivers the world has ever known. In fact, there seemed to be no way to stop Fangio, but out in Cuba they managed it. They kidnapped him.
Is Juan Manuel Fangio of Argentina. In the trial run, he makes the fastest time, and all await the finals. But Fangio, here shown away from the track, is suddenly to disappear. Kidnapped at pistol point by Cuban rebels, obviously seeking to embarrass President Batista's government by making sure the star attraction is not on the starting line for the big race. Fangio is released, but he can't ride in the event he was favored to win. Instead, tragedy stalks Havana's beautiful Malecon circuit. The start had been delayed with the hope Fangio would show up. Now, 27 drivers representing 12 nations have completed a half hour of driving. Suddenly, disaster! Skidding into the crowd at 100 miles an hour, one of the cars mows down dozens of spectators, which cancels the race and all its sporting luster.
The French Grand Prix in 1958 was notable as Fangio's last race. Hawthorne went into the lead, followed by Luigi Musso. There was a tremendous battle behind, Moss with the Van Wall, Beira and Shell with BRMs, and Fangio in the Piccolo Maserati. Unfortunately, Musso tried too hard to keep up with Hawthorne, made a mistake on the Gür curve after the pits, slid wide and crashed over the barrier into a field, and died from his injuries. Moss was second in the Van Wall, with Taffy von Tripp's third in a Ferrari, and 47-year-old Juan Manuel Fangio finished fourth in his last race.
In 1958, Fangio laid aside his crash helmet and goggles to retire at the peak of his fame, beloved by all who loved the sport that this quiet and gentle man adorned so well. Before returning to his native Argentine, a visit to the Italian Grand Prix as spectator provided Fangio with the opportunity to bid farewell to his many friends and admirers. Juan Manuel Fangio, who sought and found by dangerous roads a path to perpetuity of fame, will race no more. But on whatever road he travels, he will carry with him always our admiration and our deep affection.